Greetings. Welcome to another video in our series of videos on liberalizing inter-African trade in wild meat. This video series is brought to you by the African Wildlife Economy Institute at Stellenbosch University in South Africa in partnership with the Atlas Network. Thank you for watching.
In the previous video, I shared the recommendations specific to the AfCFTA mechanism. In this one, I share broader recommendations related to the research. The following recommendations are within the context of this research, but stretch broader than the specific recommendations aimed at the AfCFTA mechanism. It will be useful to harmonize and standardize at a continental level what wildlife meat is or is not in the commercial sense in the wild meat industry. The certainty that language and definition provides can ease the further standardization of import and export guidelines or protocols. The standard should be set by a consultation within industry and contain details that distinguish the understanding of wildlife meat, what it is not, in terms of ranching practices, veterinary intervention, etc. Related to the definition of what wildlife meat is the further definition of wild meat in tariff books. One of the barriers highlighted in this research is inadequate product classification or customs issues. Clarity of HS codes beyond a 6-digit level will not only facilitate eased movement across borders and potentially avoid delays in the movement of perishable products, but it will also start to develop a clearer picture of the more precise economic value of formerly traded wild meat and valuable data for the industry. The research indicates a point in the value chain of wild meat that faces a particularly high concentration of barriers to trade, the harvesting phase. Where national standards are absent or inadequate, develop private standards for the harvesting of wild meat in the AfCFTA area. It is important that these be accessible and are accompanied by accessible and up-to-date import and export guidelines per category of wild meat where necessary, per country in the AfCFTA. Namibia has an example of clear guidelines for harvesting for export to the EU. The animal health status of the country has a large bearing on the ability to export or not. Diseases such as foot and mouth disease, African swine fever, rabies, and avian influenza are examples of diseases that both the livestock and wildlife industries are affected by. To adequately address the barrier, there must be cooperation with the domestic livestock industry in the reporting, control of, and prevention of animal diseases that affect both industries. There must also be cooperation between commercially orientated and hobby-focused wildlife producers in the reporting, control of, and prevention of animal diseases. It is recommended that technical, veterinary, and trade literature and training material be developed to create awareness of the importance of and actions to take towards greater animal health and disease prevention. There are solutions that already exist, and it's recommended that industry further develop these existing recommendations, for example, commodity-based trade from areas in which animal health statuses fluctuate. It is very important that government departments simplify and streamline permit procedures. This can be done through cooperation with the domestic livestock industry in the development of simplified procedures for permitting, especially as it relates to the control of diseases that affect the trade in both domestic livestock and wild meat. It would be useful to develop an open central database of up-to-date, accessible scientific information and trade guidelines per species of wildlife exported for purposes of facilitating the continuation or resumption of trade in the event of an outbreak of a listed animal health disease. The central database should contain templates of harmonized veterinary certificates based on the guidelines by international standard-setting bodies for use by the relevant departments responsible for issuing them. The templates should be available and should account for the different scenarios that possibly arise during and after disease outbreaks. Explanatory literature of the technical justification for the specifications should accompany the templates. What is also important is the development of technical veterinary and trade literature that is science-based and user-friendly to accompany the request for specific permit requests in countries where the exporter is known to not have comparable wildlife or diseases present. Legislation must be enabling, and it must not add to the collection of barriers that already exist. It is not possible to entirely remove barriers related to regulation if the legislation under which the trade is conducted is not purpose-specific and is in itself a barrier to trade on account of vagueness, outdated practices, or other reasons. Legislation should domesticate international rights, principles, and obligations into national law for purposes of certainty, transparency, and benefit of the individuals to whom it applies in international trade. Where there are gaps in what the government departments or competent authorities can do, there should be space for private standards or assignees to act. In this video, the following recommendations have been made. Harmonize and standardize what wildlife meat means. define HS codes beyond the 6-digit HS code level in national tariff books, address specific barriers during the harvesting phase of the value chain, support the further development of existing recommendations and strategies to facilitate import and export of wild meat trade, cooperate with other industries on the removal of barriers related to the country animal health status, create an open AfCFTA database that contains templates of harmonized veterinary certificates, develop technical trade literature to accompany requests for permits related to specialized wild meat products or categories of wild meat, simplify and streamline permit procedures, reform national legal frameworks related to this, and address administrative capacity of the competent authorities with private standards where necessary. The next video in the series will provide concluding remarks and next steps in the research. Please join us and watch the last video in the series for further information.
Increasing the trade in wild meat across the African continent is a key research area for the Institute. We see international trade of wildlife products as critical to the conservation of landscapes and wildlife on the continent and to the enhancement of local livelihoods and to community well-being. For more information on our work, please visit our website. Also join us on social media. You'll find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you again for watching this video.